The glass hit the floor before anyone in that room had time to brace for it. It wasn't thrown at her. Not exactly. Madame Seoyeon Kang's hand simply opened, and the wine glass she'd been holding met the marble beside Brittany's feet, and the sound of it breaking was the loudest thing that had happened at that table all night. A shard caught the hem of Brittany's dress. She didn't look down at it right away. She looked at the woman who'd let it go. Nobody moved. Jaiwoo's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. At the far end of the table, Marcus Han watched with an expression that had nothing to do with the glass and everything to do with something only he understood yet. Hwan was already on his feet, chair scraping back hard enough to make Jaiwoo flinch. That's enough. It is not enough. His mother hadn't switched to English. She was still looking at Brittany like the woman across from her might disappear if she refused to speak a language she'd understand. She's sitting at my table. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Everything at this table concerns me. Brittany stood up, not to leave. She smoothed the front of her dress and looked directly at the woman who just let a glass slip 3 feet from her shoes. "I'll clean that up," she said in English, unbothered. "Just point me toward a broom." 6 weeks earlier, none of them knew the other existed. Brittany Coleman had been in Lowe's Angels 4 years, climbing at an architecture firm that specialized in adaptive reuse, old buildings given new purpose instead of torn down. She was good at the job, better than good. She'd fought for every title at a firm that liked to talk about merit and consistently forgot her name in meetings where the credit got handed around. She didn't complain. Complaining cost more than it returned. What she did instead was outwork the forgetting. She met Hwan Kang the night her rideshare app died in the rain outside a closed restaurant. A black car pulled up. The back door opened from the inside. "You'll get sick standing there." She bent down. A man, early 30s, in a suit that didn't come off any rack she recognized, watching her with an expression that gave nothing away. "I don't get in cars with strangers." "None taken." He held a card toward the open door without leaning across the seat. "Car service 2 blocks up on 6th. Tell them Kang sent you. They'll comp it." The door closed. The car pulled away. She stood there 10 seconds before realizing she hadn't asked him a single question, and he hadn't waited for one. The firm sent her to the Kang Group, building 3 weeks later. She didn't connect the name until she was standing in the lobby with no ID badge. "Coleman, 2nd floor." The security guard barely looked up. "You're early. Mr. Kang's still on a call." A door opened down the hall. The voice she recognized before she saw him, ending a call in Korean, sharp final. He rounded the corner. Stopped. "You're the woman from the rain." "You're the man who gave a stranger a car service without her name." Something moved across his face, almost a smile, then thought better of it. "You're here about Wilshire." "I didn't know it was yours." "It's not yet. That's why you're here." He listened while she pitched saving the building instead of gutting it. 2 questions in, she realized he'd read every page before she'd walked in. At the end, packing her bag, he said, not looking up, "You take your coffee black. No sugar." "I didn't mention that." "Coffee sleeve in your bag, no sugar packets in your things." He closed his folder. "Guess." It wasn't nothing. She noticed that he'd noticed. She noticed herself noticing that. What she didn't know yet, Kang Group's glass and steel holdings were the visible third of something considerably deeper. Hwan had inherited that deeper part at 26, when his father died in a way the family still wouldn't discuss above a whisper. He hadn't slept more than 5 hours a night since. Marcus Han had been beside him since before any of it, a friend from childhood turned second in command. It was Marcus who said Brittany's last name out loud first, 3 weeks after Wilshire was approved, and something shifted across his face for half a second. "Coleman," testing the weight of it, "common enough name." "You know her?" "No," a half beat too fast, "just thinking out loud." Hwan let it go. The Wilshire project pulled them into the same rooms for weeks. There was a dinner that started as business and ran 2 hours past the point business had anything left to say. There was a night he found her alone at the site past dark, checking measurements by flashlight, and instead of asking why she hadn't gone home, he shrugged off his jacket, draped it over her shoulders, and held the light steady while she finished. You didn't have to do that. I know, he didn't take it back. The stairwell moment came on a Thursday. She turned to point out a support beam, and he was closer than either of them accounted for. His hand came up, not toward her face, not quite, just near enough she felt the air shift. His phone rang. He stepped back like the sound had physically pushed him. Marcus, I need to take this. Neither mentioned the second. They'd spent standing closer than the beam required. It was around then that Wilshire's lead contractor, a woman named Elaine Cho, sharp-tongued, connected to half the developers in the city, started finding reasons to be in every room H-Wan was in. She wasn't subtle about it. She touched his arm when she laughed. She mentioned, twice in front of Brittany, dinners she and H-Wan had shared before the American consultant showed up. Brittany said nothing the first time. The second time, she looked Elaine dead in the eye and said, "Funny, he's never once mentioned you," and walked out of the meeting before anyone could answer. H-Wan caught up with her in the parking garage. "She's lying," he said. "I know," Brittany said. "I wasn't asking." "You looked like you needed to hear it anyway." She didn't answer that, but she let him drive her home that night instead of calling a car, and neither of them filled the silence with anything at all, and that silence said more than the whole dinner had. 3 weeks later, Jai-Woo said the word serious out loud at a family dinner Brittany wasn't at. "You've never brought a woman home who wasn't already approved. Mom's going to ask questions." "Mom asks questions about everything." "Not like this." Jai-Woo set her chopsticks down. "You like her. You haven't said her name once tonight, and you never hide the things you don't care about people knowing." The invitation to formal dinner came from his mother, not from him. "Invite her Friday," Madam Kang said on the phone, giving nothing away. "Loma, I want to meet the woman who's had my son distracted for 4 months. Unless there's a reason you don't want me to." "Friday," he agreed. He told Brittany carefully. "The way you tell someone about whether you already know is coming. She's going to test you. She's going to look for a reason this doesn't work. And if I pass, she still might not like it." His jaw tightened. "This isn't about you. Whatever she says at that table, it was never about you. I've survived rooms that didn't want me in them before. I know you will." Quiet, like it cost him something. "I'm not worried about whether you survive it. I'm worried what it costs you to have to." "That Friday, in the car outside the gate," he said. "Whatever happens in there, you're not alone in that room." Madam Kang was waiting in the entryway. Her eyes went over Brittany once, cataloging. "You're taller than I expected," she said, in Korean, to no one in particular. She understands Korean, Oma. Something flickered, recalculation, not embarrassment. "How much?" "Enough," Brittany answered, in Korean, imperfect but unmistakable. "I've been studying. I wanted to understand the family that matters to H-Wan." The pause before matters wasn't accidental. Madam Kang heard it. She turned toward the dining room without a word. Dinner started politely. Jai-Woo sat beside Brittany, warm in a way that felt deliberate. Marcus sat at the far end, quieter than usual, watching Brittany with an attention that had nothing to do with romance. Madam Kang waited until the second course. "Tell me about your father. What does he do?" The table went still. H-Wan's hand tensed near his glass. "My father passed away," Brittany said, even, "when I was 22. "I'm sorry." She didn't sound sorry. "How?" "Seo-yeon," a warning. "I'm asking her, H-Wan." "Business dispute," Brittany said. "That went wrong, that's all I know for certain." Something crossed Marcus' Hand's face, brief, but Brittany caught it. Guilt, not sympathy. "You believe you understand what it means, marrying into a family like ours." "Loma, I'm asking her, well." Brittany set her fork down. "I understand you've already decided the answer before you ask the question. I won't spend tonight trying to talk you out of that." "Then what do you think I want?" "You want to see if I'll fold. I won't. I'd rather you dislike who I actually am than approve of a version of me that isn't real." For a long moment, nobody moved. That was when the glass hit the floor. If you're just finding this story tonight, welcome. And if you've been here since the beginning, thank you for coming back for another one. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I read every single one. If you want to be here for what happens next, go ahead and like and subscribe now, because this dinner is about to get a lot worse before it gets better. I'll clean that up, Brittany said again. Just point me toward a broom. Sit down. Madame Kang's voice had lost none of its edge, but something underneath it shifted. She hadn't expected this, and it showed. No, Brittany said. Not until someone tells me why my father's face is on a wall in your study. The words landed like a second glass breaking. Hwan turned toward her, slow, confused in a way that told her this wasn't something he already knew. What did you just say? I found a photograph earlier. My father, next to a man I don't recognize, in front of a building I don't recognize. Marcus told me to ask you about it instead of him. Her eyes moved to the end of the table, which tells me he already knows the answer. Every eye turned to Marcus. Not here, he said, quiet. Here. Hwan's voice dropped into something none of them had heard from him at that table before. Now. Madame Kang's hands went still. For the first time all night, the coldness in her face gave way to fear, not of Brittany. Fear of what was about to be said out loud. Don't, she said, quiet, almost pleading. She's been sitting at this table with the answer hanging on your wall for 4 months, Marcus said. None of us said a word. Brittany's chest went tight, though her face didn't show it. Someone needs to start talking before I walk out that door and start asking questions somewhere else. Hwan reached for her hand. She let him take it, eyes still on Marcus. Your father wasn't just in business with someone connected to this family, Marcus said finally. He was in business with this family, with my father and with Hwan's father before either of them passed. And that business is why he's dead, Brittany said, quiet, certain. I was 23, Marcus said. I didn't make the call, I just... Just what? Hwan said. Marcus looked at him, then at Brittany. Then, for the first time all night, at his mother, whose face had gone the color of old paper. I knew what happened to her father. I never told either of you. Nobody in that room moved. Hwan stood, chair scraping back a second time, and this time it wasn't for his mother. He crossed to where Marcus sat and put both hands flat on the table in front of him, leaning in close enough that the rest of the room could hear every word without him raising his voice at all, which was somehow worse than shouting would have been. 12 years, Hwan said. 12 years I've trusted you with everything. My father's death. This family's business. Her. His eyes flicked once toward Brittany, then back. And you knew. This whole time you knew, and you let her sit at every dinner not knowing why she felt like she recognized this house before she ever set foot in it. I was protecting the family, Marcus said. You were protecting yourself. Jaiwoo's voice, sharp, surprising all of them. She hadn't said a word since the glass broke. That's what this always was, wasn't it? Not the family, you. Marcus didn't answer that. He didn't have an answer for that. Madame Kang pushed her chair back and stood, and for the first time since Brittany had walked through the front door that evening, the woman looked less like a matriarch defending a legacy and more like someone standing at the edge of something she could no longer control. There are things about that night none of you understand, she said. Things I chose not to carry into this house, because carrying them would have meant none of us survived what came after. Then tell us, Hwan said, all of it right now. Madame Kang's eyes moved to Brittany, and for one strange second, something passed between them that hadn't been there all evening, not warmth, not yet, but recognition. The recognition of two women who'd both spent years absorbing things they weren't allowed to say out loud. Not tonight, Madame Kang said. Not like this, standing over broken glass with everyone shouting. You don't get to decide that anymore, Brittany said, and her voice, for the first time all night, had an edge in it that matched the room. You decided a lot of things about me tonight without asking. This isn't one of them. Madame Kang looked at her for a long moment. Then, quietly, she sat back down, not in defeat exactly, but in something close to it, the posture of a woman recalculating a battle she'd assumed she already understood the shape of. His name was Robert Coleman, she said finally, not looking at anyone in particular. He came to my husband with an investment opportunity 15 years ago, real estate, legitimate on paper. He didn't know, I don't believe he ever knew, what else my husband's company touched. Brittany's hand, still in H-Wan's, went rigid. There was a dispute, Madame Kang continued, over money that had gone missing from the deal. My husband believed someone inside the partnership had taken it. He was not a patient man when it came to money that disappeared. Her voice didn't waver, but something in it had gone very careful, like she was picking her way across ice she already knew was cracking. Robert Coleman was not the one who took it. But he was the one who discovered who did. And he made the mistake of confronting that person directly, instead of coming to my husband first. Who? H-Wan said, flat final. Madame Kang's eyes moved, slow, deliberate, to the man still sitting frozen at the end of the table. Marcus's father, she said. It was Marcus's father who took the money. And it was Marcus's father who made sure Robert Coleman never had the chance to say so out loud to anyone who mattered. The room went absolutely silent. Brittany felt the words land somewhere underneath her ribs, a slow, cold weight settling into place where a question had been sitting unanswered for 6 years. Not H-Wan's family. Not directly. Marcus's father and Marcus, 23 years old at the time, learning the truth and burying it instead of ever letting it surface. You knew this, Brittany said to Marcus, and her voice had gone dangerously quiet now. And you let me sit in this house. You let me fall for him. You watched me eat dinner across from you for months and you said nothing. What was I supposed to say? Marcus's composure finally cracked, all at once, like something that had been holding under pressure for years and simply gave out. That my father killed your father. That I found out when I was 23 and spent the next decade making sure nobody ever connected the dots. Because if they had, it wouldn't have just ended my father's life. It would have ended mine, and it would have ended this family's business, and everyone at this table would have paid for something none of us actually did. That's not your call to make, H-Wan said. That was never your call to make. Wasn't it? Marcus stood now too, something raw breaking through the careful control he'd kept all night. You think you'd have done differently. You think if it had been your father sitting on that secret, you wouldn't have buried it just as deep. Don't, H-Wan said. Put my father's name in your mouth right now. The two men stood facing each other across a table, still scattered with broken glass. 12 years of friendship sitting between them like something neither one knew how to hold on to anymore. And Brittany watched it happen with a strange, distant clarity. The sense that she'd walked into this house tonight looking for one truth and found an entirely different one waiting underneath it, uglier and closer than anything she'd imagined. If you've stayed with this story all the way to this table, thank you, genuinely, whether you've been here since the very first scene or you just found us tonight. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It means a lot seeing how far this travels. And if you want to be here when the next part goes up, this is the moment to hit like and subscribe, because what Brittany does next is going to decide whether this family survives the truth that just came out. Brittany stood up from the table, and this time, nobody told her to sit back down. I need air, she said, to no one and everyone at once, and walked toward the hallway before anyone could stop her. H-Wan followed. He caught up to her near the front door, where she'd stopped, one hand braced against the frame, breathing like she'd been holding it in since the moment Madame Kang said her father's name out loud. Brittany. I'm fine. She wasn't looking at him. You don't have to be fine right now. He stepped closer, careful, like she was something that might startle if he moved too fast. Not with me, not tonight. She turned to face him, and for the first time all evening, something in her composure gave way, not collapse, not tears exactly, just the smallest crack in the wall she'd kept steady through an entire table of people testing her. Your best friend's father killed mine, she said. And your best friend has known that for a decade, and he sat across from me at dinner after dinner, and none of you knew, and I didn't know, and now I don't know what to do with any of it. Neither do I, H-Wan admitted, quiet. But I know I'm not walking away from you because of something my family did before either of us existed to stop it. That's easy to say standing here. It's not easy, he said. Nothing about tonight is easy, but it's true. He reached for her hand, slow, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Whatever happens next with Marcus, with my mother, with all of it, you don't have to carry it alone. I meant that in the car, I mean it more now. She looked at him for a long moment, and something passed between them that hadn't fully arrived, yet all the other times it had almost happened. The stairwell, the jacket, the parking garage after Elaine Cho's comment that hadn't needed a response. This time neither phone rang. Nobody interrupted. His hand came up to her face, and she let him, and for one full second the entire house behind them. His mother, the broken glass, Marcus standing frozen at that table with a truth he'd carried alone for 10 years, disappeared entirely. Then headlights swept across the driveway behind them, sharp and sudden, and both of them turned toward the gate as an unfamiliar car pulled through it without waiting to be buzzed in. "That's not one of ours," H-Wan said, already stepping in front of her. The car stopped hard enough to kick gravel, and the driver's door opened before the engine had fully cut out. A man stepped out, mid-30s, unfamiliar, moving with the kind of urgency that meant whatever he was here for hadn't waited for an invitation. "Which one of you is Kang?" the man said, scanning the front of the house, and there was something in his voice that made H-Wan's whole posture change, shift into something colder, more alert. "Depends who's asking," H-Wan said. The man's eyes landed on Brittany next, and something in his expression shifted when they did. Recognition, sharp and unmistakable, the look of a man who hadn't expected to see her standing on these steps tonight of all nights. "Brittany Coleman," he said, and it wasn't a question. "You need to come with me right now." That's where this part of the story has to end tonight, right there, in the driveway, with a stranger who knows Brittany's name standing between her and everything she just learned inside that house. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying with every twist this story's taken so far. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, hit like if you need to know who that man is as badly as I do, and subscribe so you're here the second the next part goes live, because we're not done with the Kang family's secrets. Not even close.